All right. Hi, folks. Steven here. So we're doing something a little bit different. You notice we have Anne on here. A little bit of a different setup. So we are planning on doing a discussion of Pokemon Art Academy probably in a couple weeks. But due to various factors, we decided we wanted to do something a little bit different. And basically, I wanted to demo some artificial intelligence, generative AI type stuff with Anne here so that she can ask some questions. Now, if you've seen the pre-show for some of our other discussions, you notice I've been putting in various types of things in there, and usually focused around what if scenarios, like since we still don't have a great idea what the next Pokemon movie is, there's some stuff there. But this is the actual tool. Now, Stable Diffusion is an actual framework. The UI you see here is called Automatic 1111, and for this particular thing here, what's going to be happening is we're going to be using various checkpoints. You can see up on the top left. A checkpoint is just basically a bunch of model data. And I'll be explaining how these things, to the best of my knowledge as a programmer, they're still difficult from that level, but how they work and stuff like that. But this is a text-to-image and other feature generative thing that you can do locally. And the neat thing about that is that unlike something like Midjourney or Dolly or whatever, where you have to log into a server and stuff and you have to have a certain number of credits and stuff, if you have a decent graphics card, you can run this. Now, we'll be running most of our stuff will be on the 1.5 version of Stable Diffusion. There are some newer versions, but they aren't as well supported, and they don't have all the things that I've built out yet, and my GPU can't really handle some of the newer versions that well. We'd be waiting several minutes per image, which is not what we want here. But just to sort of explain what we have here, so this is a very basic prompt. It has a couple parts here. First off, you'll notice this thing that says Det Pika Movie 15. So this is where I've trained a bunch of screenshots from the Detective Pikachu live action movie that came out back in 2019. I took a bunch of screenshots there. However, the big thing I want to get across right here is what's stored in these models and these embeddings, and you might hear the term LoRa, is not really pixel data in the standard sense of, say, a JPEG or a PNG image. What actually gets stored there is a bunch of connections, that's what they call a neural network, between concepts, and also a bunch of statistical distributions. So it has an idea of what kind of focus or what type of range of colors or whatnot are associated with each thing. So it doesn't really store images. Yes, it is trained on a lot of data, but the actual sum total of all the image files that are used to train something like this is much higher than the size of the model. Even though the models here tend to be in the gigabyte range, they're usually trained on terabytes and terabytes of data, orders of magnitude higher. So it doesn't really store pixel data, and instead it has sort of statistical information regarding brush strokes and so on and so forth. So a couple things here. This is the text-to-image tab. Let's see. Right now we're using a model called Realistic Vision. So this is used to create photographic images. You might notice down here right now that it didn't get a lot of great images. So this is supposed to be a ninja hideout. Supposedly what you might see in like a Detective Pikachu universe movie there. We didn't get a ton of stuff. I didn't give it a whole lot to work with either. These prompts here can go on for a very long time. And why don't you suggest a few words here? Now, bear in mind, this model is not going to have a ton of detail on various Pokemon-related things. There are some Pokemon-related models and stuff out there that you can bring in, but I don't have any of that here. This is fairly generic. Do you have some words you might think we could add in here?
Okay, what about purple-haired karate master with sentient ball of gas companion? See if we can get Master Koga in here.
We'll start with a purple-haired martial artist.
Okay.
So here's a few settings here that you should know about. Kind of ignore the high-res fix. We don't want that. Also, that refiner. But generation, we have what's called a sampling method, which is sort of, it's hard to really explain those, even as a computer science person, but basically there are a bunch of these different things that do slightly different things. The way this works is that it starts usually from random noise and builds an image by manipulating it piece by piece. And that's what these sampling steps refer to. There's going to be 20 steps of that. So you're going to see down here an image that slowly comes into focus, and we're going to get 5 of them because I have this batch count. They're not particularly large images, but we can fix that later. The CFG scale basically says how much weight it's going to give our prompt versus how much it's going to experiment on its own. There's some stuff down here that we don't need to worry about at the moment because we are using images from scratch. So let's see what we get from this one here. Like I said, these can get incredibly detailed. As you also notice, there's a negative prompt down here. That is for things that you don't want there. Interesting that we seem to be getting female ninjas here for the most part.
Yeah, maybe we need to specify.
Yep. And, we try to keep everything safe for work here, but some of these images... But let's just take a look at the images we got here. So these, like I said, are just... Let me see. Yep, there we go.
She looks like she would own a poison type gym. Yeah.
Yeah, this might be... We might have gotten Janine instead of Koga, but...
That's fine.
But you can totally put that in there with a male... with spiky hair and a scarf. But you can keep doing these variations. Now, in case you're curious about my hardware setup, I'm using an NVIDIA RTX 3050, which is really not that high end of a model. It does have 8 gigabytes of VRAM. So we got something a little bit different here.
A couple more age lines, and some of them look like they could, again, own a poison type gym and take me down.
Yeah, so that's kind of the stuff you can do from scratch. And like I said, as these sort of developed, you started off with if we didn't have them blurred, you'd be seeing a lot of noise, and that slowly came into focus. So let me pick out one of these here and see if we can make it. I said these were very small images. So let's go ahead and pick, I think, this one. Looks kind of nice. Well, actually, let me just take a look here. I think there might have been a better one in there. Let's try this one. Yeah, we were playing around with some Pokemon Masters EX screenshots you can see down there. We'll talk more about that later, but let's see, can I take this and open image output? Send this to the image to image tab. You can see here we were playing around with some screenshots from Pokemon 2000, but so we brought this in here, and what we want to do actually, to make this bigger, there's a bunch of different ways to do that. We can basically we can make this like this. And so let me explain what all these sliders do. So image to image lets you take an existing image. This could be one you brought from outside or one you created elsewhere, and so on and so forth. But you can do all sorts of stuff here where, like if I wanted to draw in another element, there's this sketch or in paint functionality where if I wanted to put something, like maybe I wanted to put a bat, or something up there or something like that, something that looks kind of like it would belong in that gym, and I wanted to work my way through it, I could do that. But here we're just trying to upscale the image. So I changed our images here. And let's see. I have a couple things. First of all, we have our CFG scale. We have our denoising strength. So on this tab, this tells it how much of the image it is allowed to change when it reworks it. And actually, we probably want, I'm not sure why I didn't pick up the seed here, because we probably want to keep that seed the same. So let me go ahead and get the seed value. There are other Yeah, go ahead, Anne, if you were about to say
I was
something.
going to ask, so seed value just means the text prompt, or?
So a seed value, so if you've ever done programming with random number generation, computers can't really do true random number generation internally. But the way it works is usually there's a seed value. Usually it's based on some sort of like the number of milliseconds or whatever that the computer has been up or something like that. Like it's not the same as like rolling a pair of dice, even though you see the dice icon. So it uses a seed value to generate the starting noise for the image. And because we're just trying to upscale this image, we want this to be about the same there. So let's give this a try here. Give it a second here to think. This will take longer because it's physically rendering more data. So it's going to take a little while here to get through all this. So you notice it does change something. Well, now we're getting a little bit closer to it, but it should be a higher resolution image. And you can go kind of as high as you want here, but it does take more RAM in your graphics card and stuff like that the bigger you want to go with that. So let's see what we get here. Yeah, so it's doing some interesting things. We said here to actually use 3 in our batch count, so it is generating 3 images. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to type that in the chat. But you can see we got 3 slightly different images here, I believe. They're pretty close because we didn't let it do the denoising strength. But you notice here we got 3 somewhat different images. Then we could control that more by changing the allowed denoising strength. But if I boost this up, you can see it made this image physically larger here and higher resolution. Now, if I wanted to do more with this, I would probably go ahead and save it. This one maybe turned out, I would maybe take this into something like Photoshop or some other stuff I have to process it more and do stuff like that. But you can easily see how, for people, it's actually not too difficult. Now, for creatures, because of the way these models work, they don't have concepts for, as big as they are, even in the multiple gigabytes, they don't have data on every single species of Pokemon out there or every character and stuff like that, because that would just take up even only giving maybe a few kilobytes. Because this embedding I made for Detective Pikachu Movie 15 is only probably about, well, I can look it up. Let's see here. If I go to my embeddings, there's only about 13 kilobytes worth of data that represents that it gleaned and aggregated from all of those several dozen pictures from the movie. So it's so tiny. So like I said, that when I say it's not storing pixels, that's what I mean. But let's try doing something a little bit different. I'm going to switch models here back to the default Stable Diffusion model here. This is going to take a moment to switch here, but what we're going to do, because we are discussing Pokemon Art Academy in a little bit, I was able to extract the images from my version of it, which was actually played on my Japanese 3DS LL. And I've extracted a bunch of images there, and we're going to try and restylize them in there. So let's go ahead and try that as soon as this finishes loading, which will take a little while, because it is a multi-gigabyte file that's reading off of a hard disk on my computer. But it does use all the different things there. So let's see here. Oh, looks like it's just about ready here. It only took about 44 seconds. Apply weights model, save model to device. So it looks like we should be ready to go here. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to get a new image here. And let's bring in there. So this is, I had to crop this to make it square because this primarily deals with square images. You can get around that, but okay, let's go back to 512 by 512, so we're doing this square. So there's another feature up here called Interrogate Clip. And what this will do is it'll actually analyze this picture and try and figure out through a separate data model what it is. So let's see how it does. It's always funny. We did this with that. You might have seen that screenshot from Pokemon 2000. We did it there, and it came with something very, very different from what it is. A crouching Pikachu holding a piece of food in its hand, looking at the camera with a surprised look on its face. Alice Prin, Pokemon pixel art. So that's interesting. Which, it's got some of that right.
It's definitely a Pikachu.
Okay, so let's see. Well, that Van Gogh thing didn't go so well, so let's put that name in there and see if we can come up with... Did I spell that right? I probably didn't. Oh, it's a proper noun. So we'll give this a polka dot background and see what we get here. So like I said, this is something, it was based on a template that's in the game. But we're going to give this a shot, and we'll put that seed back at random since we're starting with a fixed image again. And let's see, let's turn the denoising strength down a little bit. Let's see what we get here. Well, it made the lines better, I can tell you that much. But I wouldn't call this, super Van Gogh there. So let's see if we move up the denoising strength. Let's see what we get here with this one. One thing I should note with these, there are ways to sort of raise or lower the weight given to each part of this phrase, but generally speaking, stuff towards the front will give you more or less. Well, that looks a little more, taking a little more liberty with this one, with some of the stuff there. And I tried to draw some extra feet. You guys, with this, it's not uncommon to get not quite what you wanted here. Trying to draw some extra feet there, so.
Yeah. Like when your Pikachu wants to also be a Joltik.
So you can see this doesn't always work the way you want. Let's try another one of these. I have a good one to use with this. Let's Pikachu I know is in the base database for Stable Diffusion. So let's see. We'll do an interrogate clip. You can write a thing from scratch on here. Like I said, this is another one from this one from Pokemon Art Academy. So I'll give it a second to figure this one out. A red and white ball with a big smile on its... wrong form of the word its. Boy, I'm not sure where this name... I'm going to do a quick Google on this to see where that came from. Because I have never heard that name before. Japanese painter and protagonist of the Kasi... I'm not even going to try. Yeah, so interesting that it read that into there. Let's take that out since I don't think it's terribly thing, but I know exactly what I want to do with this nice round Pokemon here. So let's see here what it does. Start low and then work our way up. So let's see if we can add some cubism to this Voltorb.
Ooh. mean, given that it's already completely round, you can kind of see all the edges.
Yeah, so maybe that wasn't the best idea. But what happens if we say don't make it a ball, though? Let's...
Ooh.
So let's see, and then let's give it a little more freedom here. So you can kind of see how you can mess around with things. See if it tries to make it more cubic, but no, it doesn't look like we're getting...
We almost got like a 100-sided die.
Alright, so maybe this didn't work quite as well. I think I have another one. I'll do one more from this Art Academy set, and we'll see what we can do. But I think this one has a little more detail to it and might work out a little bit better. So this is a fletchling. So let's see what we get here. Charles Bird King, interesting. Yeah, it's interesting when it tries to establish a style, associate a style with it. And let's see. So he was from the he was born in the late 1700s and lived through the 1860s is how they have there. Interesting. So let's see if we can change this one. Rayonism. Yeah, you can actually kind of learn things here. I took plenty of art classes in even in college, so interesting. Rayonism is an art style from the early 1900s, and I can kind of see from looking at the results on Google where they got this. Let's see if we can turn this into CGI. We'll try a couple different styles here. And then we'll go on to some other things, I think, after this, but I wanted to try this. Well, that's an interesting result there. Tried to make it look more like a real bird here.
Yeah.
I don't really see the CGI aspect. Oh, that's...
Yeah, it's kind of got more of a pencil crayon feel, which is cool.
But you can sort of see what you can do. So this is a very interesting tool in that regard. All right, well, let's see. We have, like I said, I did try to allocate plenty of time for this one to see what goes on. But I want to explain some of the stuff I did with Anne. So one of the things I did with Anne recently, let me see if I can boot up PowerPoint. Let me move this on here. So one thing I did recently with one of our recent discussions is I put together these images that are all sort of taking stuff from various Pokemon movies and trying to make them look like, what would they look like if that movie got a CGI remake like Mewtwo Strikes Back did? And so I have a number of these here that you can see. Now this type of thing is obviously not something you're going to try and, I can't put these on a t-shirt or anything like that. These are purely designed for illustration purposes only, just to be careful about that. But I wanted to show you kind of how we made those. So first off, I have a few new images that I want to put in. And for these, you'd think I could use this feature here and some other stuff. But it's actually probably better. First of all, I want to switch models. This is a model that was trained on images from modern CGI Disney movies, which is what I used to create the images you saw in that PowerPoint there. So give it a second to go in. It should only take about path. This is actually a bit of a smaller model. So this is sort of an example of the workflow I went through. Like I said, it should just take another 15-20 seconds to finish loading. Yep. All right. So that was actually fairly quick. So let me just go ahead and run this. This is a screenshot from Destiny Deoxys. This is that scene. You remember this, Anne, where they're in the battle hall or whatever it is, where what's his name, the sheepish kid gets brought in with Ash, and then they have to go against these other two guys.
Yes.
I did write up a description of this, but let's see what Interrogate Clip comes up with.
With a big red bird on his back and a man's name.
I think that might be the same guy or someone different. I'm not sure. After modern, interesting. So I don't think this is going to be working for what, but like I said, this is not something you can, yes, you can transform screenshot this way, but this is more of a proof of concept than anything else. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back to the text to image tab, and we're going to use this thing called ControlNet, which lets you do various operations here. I'll explain more about them later, but I need to put in a new description here as well. Okay, so our goal is to see, what if this was a CGI movie? So I have another thing that I've trained, and let's see, this is going to be CGI. So here's the one that I wrote up. Let's see, batch count, put that back at 4. So like I said earlier, we showed how you can just put a description in here and you can just generate something from scratch based on a description. So here, since we're doing this to see what would this movie maybe look like if it was given a CGI remake, we're doing something a little bit different here. So taking a little bit, we're using something called ControlNet. Now in a more practical example, you would take maybe a sketch you had drawn or stuff like that, to work your way in there to create your stuff from. We have a couple filters that are running here. That's one reason this is taking a little longer. There's a little bit more startup time. So we have this one called Canny, which looks for all the edges. There's Soft Edge, which also looks for edges, but in a little more of a soft thing there. And you can see it starting to come through here. And we also have another one here that's sort of enforcing color. So here you can see we got a set of 4 images. So like I said, but you see towards the back here we have these other images that weren't generated. This is our Canny, what's called a preprocessor. And this is our soft edge, and then this is our color map that tries to keep things relatively the right color. Now if we go into our actual images, we never quite got exactly what we wanted here. But it does give a pretty good idea. I mean, this wasn't one of the ones I picked up in there. But you can see through our 4 images. This one, the face, I don't know why that went black. Like I said, it doesn't have to obey everything you put in there. But you can sort of see from these images, we got a fairly good idea based on that what this might look like. I think this might be kind of the best one, although you'd probably want it to have a little less of these hard edges and stuff like that.
And we need to talk about our background characters' faces in that last one, too.
Oh, yeah.
They're a little fun. They're a little fun.
Well, yeah, just remember what we had to deal with, though, from Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution.
Yes.
The people were not the most well-regarded stuff in there. But we could run this as many times as we want when we get this. Like I said, this is something that I would do as a proof of concept here. But you kind of get the idea. Like I said, if I generate this again, it'll run through again. We'll get 4 slightly different images. But let me just point out a few things here. Each of these things has a preprocessor usually, and that's sort of where we got these kind of weird looking images here, is it preprocessed the data and used that. Has a control weight, and that tells you how much it puts in. And then you have a control starting and ending control step. So one of the fun things you can do with this is you can tell it to stop mattering for this type of addition that you're making after a little while. Wait, that's not it. Sorry, I'm not sure what happened there. I accidentally dragged something. We use the same image, but you could do something different as well. But for some of these, like this edge stuff, you notice here I stop it a little bit beforehand. That gives the algorithm a little bit of freedom to stylize it. There's a bunch of these other ones here. There's a, let's see. You can use a reference image. So for example, if one of the images, I had an image that I think captured this fairly well, I might include that there. Like I said, this is more for proof of concept. This is not something I'm going to claim as my original work because it isn't. But it has a very useful purpose for what I call speculative media, and that's what we did in that presentation there. All right. Well, let's pick one more of these. I didn't pick any of the alternate universe movies. So let's pick something that's actually probably not that difficult for it to see if we get something a little bit better. So this is part of the opening scenes from The Power of Us, where we're seeing the school that Risa goes to, and we're seeing the circuit here. So it should be able to do a fairly good job on this one. Should be pretty straightforward. Nice little landscape. Let's see, did it not bring in the... Doesn't have focus. I think that's the problem. So if we do that here, like I said, again, this takes a second to get there. And you have... Oh, there we go. So let's see. Oh, that's interesting. It looks like it's trying to put a lake in there.
Yeah.
Are they playing
the
water
polo, Pokemon?
Or?
And a village, maybe, as well.
Yeah, so we'll see what we get here when this comes through.
A Christmas tree? A farm?
So yeah, here's the edges it detected there. This one's a little more... You notice it did pick up some different stuff here than it did here. This is... And here's our color map. So yeah, not sure exactly what it was doing with that. But you can sort of definitely see the sort of outline of the image.
Yeah.
Not sure why there's a bunch of lava in the middle of the field there, but...
Groudon. Someone brought a Groudon to the...
This one might be the closest here. Obviously, we could do this, but just for sort of a proof of concept of what things might look like. This could also be very useful if you're doing something like trying to figure out what like a remake of Black and White might look like. You could take some screenshots from there and rule that out. But I do encourage you folks, make sure you label your stuff as AI creations when you do stuff like that, just so it doesn't get spread around the internet as a thing that's definitely going to happen. All right. Well, we have one more thing. We're going to go through a fair number of things. I'm not sure exactly how many, but one more thing I wanted to show in here. So another thing I did, if I can find it. Nope, that isn't it. It's a different pre-show. I think this one. Yeah, so this was another thing we did while we're waiting for this to load the new model. So I used a realistic vision model to take a bunch of screenshots from Pokemon Masters EX and transform them to what it would maybe look like in a live-action Detective Pikachu universe movie. You may have seen this as a short, but I also did it as a pre-show here. So we're going to try this again. So this again was another proof of concept thing. But I want to try it with a few new things here. Okay, looks like we got that ready to go. So first off, we're going to see here, what do we got from our good pal Guzma. And we're going to change this to and we're going to change this instead of being CGI to be a photograph. I could see Guzma popping up in a cinematic universe type movie. It'd be an interesting character to do something with.
For sure.
So here I have man with white hair, yellow rimmed sunglasses, gold necklace, black jacket, black pants, smiling confidently in front of a stock background, which pretty well describes this screenshot that we have down here. So let's see what we get. So yeah, this is going to take a little while to see what we get out the other end of it. And this is why one thing is, because these are kind of still they're somewhat realistic, but they're still very cartoonish proportions on a certain level. That's why at the end of these, for the canny and the soft edge, I have it turned off at a certain point because it helps me get the things. It looks like we're getting something kind of interesting here.
Yeah, it looks like sometimes it can't figure out if the eyes are behind the glasses or under the glasses.
Well, we did get some stuff here, so let's see.
Definitely got a good grin on him.
So we can add more in here. Let me go ahead and make him more. I don't consider myself a pro with this, but we're kind of getting there a little bit. On his forehead, and you can see some remnants of the background there. There's some things you can sort of do to change it out there by maybe saying that he's in a different place if you want to get rid of that. But you can still see a fair amount of things of that background in the back there. But let's give it another spin and see what we got there. Actually, the other thing I'm going to do is going to move the stuff back there. Let's see, is this the canny or is it the soft edge? This is the canny. Yeah, I want the canny to end before the soft edge. The tricky part is when you're dealing with actual Pokemon themselves. I've often had to go in and Photoshop and fix colors and other stuff like that to get them closer to their official colors for that. So this should only take a moment. So you can see it starts out kind of cartoonish and then that's interesting. So now I'm giving it more freedom to sort of play with the image towards the end. So let's see what we're going to get here. It's fun watching these develop. On some of the lower settings, you don't get to see this until it's finished. But on the higher systems...
I was going to say, yeah, it's cool watching it kind of go through the process and seeing different variations as it's kind of coming to.
So... not necessarily the best results here, but you kind of get the idea. I would play around with this more to see if I can get something that looks a little more realistic and stuff like that. But that gives you kind of an idea. Let's do, I think, one more of these with a different character. So this is a character who's been added to Pokemon Masters EX relatively recently, and this is a close-up face photo, so we might have better luck with this. This is Lenora from Black and White. She's the normal type gym leader. We'll change our... Yeah, she helps like run the museum and stuff there, I think. Oops. Yeah, for some reason it's not putting focus there, so the paste isn't working for some reason. There we go. So one thing it needs to kind of do here is shrink the eyes a little bit. Let's see if it does that. That's one reason for giving it that, because these eyes are obviously very cartoonish and large, despite its attempts there. And AI systems are kind of known for not always representing people of color that well.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, we got some interesting stuff. Like I said, I would want these eyes to be smaller. Didn't really seem to understand that this is like the hair.
Right, yeah. But the general idea is...
Yeah, which is, this really actually shouldn't be here. So, kept trying to do that. But it does have that dark malachite type color in there. But you could definitely work with this. So if they say wanted to,
yeah,
like I said, because this is using an existing image as the basis, this is more for like perspective. Like for example, say there was a movie announced and we knew that Lenora was going to be in it, and we wanted to maybe see what that would look like in real life, or maybe find some African American actresses and see what they might look like in that role. You could play around with this a fair bit. Let me just take a look at a few of the other ones. We talked about image to image. There's also things like Sketch and InPaint, where you can tell it to draw additional things, and sort of stuff like that. You can also do Batch. Batch is interesting. People will take like videos they've done and put that through one of these frame by frame, and will restyle them as something. Yeah, there's people have done some really interesting music video type stuff with these. With these editors with the image to image, where they can stylize something a way that they want to. This extras tab here is used for a lot of scaling type deals, is sort of the main one. Let's see, training is an interesting one. So I had mentioned earlier how I have a bunch of these. I wouldn't probably train, just so people folks know, on these specific artists here so much anymore. Kind of a little not so proud of that, but you see I have the Detective Pikachu 15. 15 is 1.5. That's the version of Stable Diffusion that is used most commonly now. Oh, and I'm also using one for Pokemon Masters EX to take other characters and restyle them for that one. But you pick a thing here, you pick what's called a learning rate. A learning rate just means how much it can change its internal model data with each step, basically. And then you point it to a folder full of images. You can give it some words to, and it'll run a certain number of steps. It'll run through them. But that's how you actually train the stuff. Like when I created these embeddings based on stuff like Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution and Detective Pikachu Movie 15 and so on and so forth. And the Pokemon Masters, you take a bunch of screenshots. And like I said, it doesn't really save the images themselves. It's more a connection of topics and of statistical distributions, which I think is why when the thing doesn't mess up and create like an extra limb or finger or something like that, from a lot of these, although you can get some really amazing stuff out of them, you also sometimes get some very middle of the road in terms of the choices it makes. And I think that's part of why the bell curve, it has a tendency to pick things from in the middle of those because of the way they're done. And you have settings and extensions. Extensions is, by the way, where I get the control net that I used here to create some of that stuff. You can do all sorts of neat little stuff. I do have a few other things I want to show outside of Stable Diffusion, but Anne, while we're here, and because it takes a while to boot up, are there some other things you'd like us to try?
Oh gosh, like it's fun seeing the characters rendered from one medium to another. Like I'm really liking what we're doing here with Lenoris, but let's see what else. Like you said, it's kind of struggled. Well, I mean, we saw it sometimes struggled a bit with the Pokemon. Yeah, like I don't know. Like let's go. Let's see like some of our like main cast of the anime characters. Like let's see what a Gary might look like, or a Brock, or.
Okay, let's see if I can find a picture that's in that realm. I do have. Like I have a couple of other main characters from Pokemon Masters that I could bring in here, but let me just see what else I've got here. Basically, if I can, the trick is, like I said, it's best if you crop these images to 512 by 512 or 768 by 768, and then you can generate the image, scale them up, and then fix them in Photoshop however you like. Let me see if I have. Okay, I do have a picture of Coco from the Secrets of the Jungle. So let's see what we can do there. This is the one where he's putting his hand up to ashes and realizing there's something he may have suspected but didn't know all his life. Also, this is another case where I have to put Crims in here because technically his hair is red, but red is also a hair color.
Right, that looks a little different.
Let's do a photograph of this first and see what we got here.
Cool.
Let's see what we got here. Since we're on the realistic vision model. But that is a big thing. Like one reason I have to put for the canny and soft edge, I have to end those a little bit early. One thing I kind of wish, let's see. Well, like I said, you still got the big cartoony eyes, which you have to kind of fix your way through. But it is giving us something here, so let's see here. So yeah, here's our various things. This didn't turn out super great here, but you can kind of see the beginnings there. Let's switch our models back over to the CGI one, and I can type in here. I can't until it actually finishes loading.
Cool.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, his body markings are gonna provide some interesting results, I think.
Yeah, let's. I don't know what the names are for that. See, it looks like it did finish there because it did. So we'll give it a second. These images down here should be exactly the same as what we got there. And like I said, you can adjust some of the parameters on things like the canny and the soft edge to see where it goes high and low to get a better image there. Yeah, kind of messed up with the eyes on this one. Like I said, there is a bit of with the batch count, there is a bit of a playing the lottery type of mechanic there, where you don't know exactly what you're going to get there. This one, maybe, I don't know, it seems to be inverting the eye colors for some reason. I mean, it's got kind of the right idea, but it can... yeah, the eyes are definitely kind of... Oh, that one's closer.
Yeah.
Not quite as cursed, But
that one, yeah, that last one.
so you got to really
Yeah,
play
it's
around
some
with this
neat
if your goal is
ideas,
to make
though,
these types of
definitely.
images. So even, if you're doing this as a proof of concept to make it work as a thing there, to see what these might look like. Because like I said, we're still kind of waiting. I'm hoping we'll find out something soon-ish about that. But that's sort of the gist of what Stable Diffusion is. So yeah, the big takeaways, like I said, these models do not store pixel data the way like a JPEG or PNG image. It's a neural network, and then usually some statistical information about whatever topic, whether it's a color or an object or a person or an art style or whatever, is kind of in there. And you can sort of train your own stuff there in a variety of ways.
Mm-hmm.
I would say if you need a GPU that has at least 4 gigabytes, preferably 6 or 8 to run the 1.5 version. The new SDXL, like I said, doesn't have the full support yet of everything. That one you probably want at least, you can kind of get away with 8 if you're willing to wait a long time, as it swaps models sometimes. But I recommend with that one, I recommend at least 12 or 16 gigs. So not the easiest thing out there, but it's a lot of interesting stuff you can do in there. And like I said, you can take, if you make an original sketch and you want to put it through this image to image or this text to image with the control net, you can totally embellish that out. And fun stuff like that. So you can just do some pretty interesting things. But I'm going to close this down for now. And anything else you want me to try here? I'm sure you can think of things later. I don't know what
like my natural instinct is like, well, let's do all the main characters, but like we don't got time for that all night. Like,
yeah, we can come back to this again if people are interested. I will certainly try and cut this down a little bit, since we did have a lot. I tried to minimize the downtime in this, but there are some other AI stuff that I wanted to point out. So let's go ahead and close this. Right. That doesn't actually close this in order to reclaim fully the thing there. I got to close all the VRAM on the GPU. Okay, there we go. So I have some other things I want to try. So one thing that I think has not gotten as much traction, or whatever else you want to say in there, as much notice, is some of the upscaling and other reconstruction AI that's out there.
mm-hmm.
So here's a little piece of software called Chainer, and what it does is you can do. It's mostly designed for video upscale and fixed processing. So, for example, if I go down here to here, and let's see, upscale image. So I need to do a couple things here. First off, so this is actually some models I originally generated to upscale images from the Super Mario Bros. Super Show. Based on that. Let's see, can I... Yes, it does work. Good. Drag and drop is your friend. I wasn't sure, so we have to do a couple more things. So this is I have a couple different variants of this model depending on how much time you can spend processing stuff. But it does work for other stuff, and I'm going to bring up some... other things here, so give it a second to... Let's see, where was it? Oh, there it is. So let's bring in, why not? Let's bring in this image here. So this is a standard definition image. Let me get it a little bit bigger so you can see here's our standard definition. This is from, I think, season 3 or 4 of the TV show. This is our standard image here. This is of Meowth and Jigglypuff with each other.
Very Johto animation vibes, yes.
Okay. So one trick with it. So this season is probably never going to get the full remaster treatment than that the first 50 or so episodes got. But using this upscaling, and there are some specific models people have created for upscaling like the film era of the Pokemon anime, so the first 4.5 seasons or so. But you can sort of see I have a little chain here. I have an image, a model, an upscale, and then we're going to pop this out. So if I click play here, it should only take a couple seconds for this image. So if I bring this in over here.
Oh.
So yeah, it's not as good as going back to the original like 16mm film, and you could certainly do better with that. And just in case you don't think that's an improvement, let me make sure I bring this in here.
Yeah, no, like I can definitely see the sharpness.
We swap between these. Right, which of these is the? There's a so you can see here it did a pretty good job with that.
Like it's a little difference, but it's like but like noticeable.
Yeah, so it does look a lot better, and like I said, so it's pretty good. And like I said, this model was not designed for this TV show for Pokemon. It was designed for the thing there. It was designed for, it was designed for the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, which don't ask me why I picked a show with live action and animated segments as my thing there. Let's see. I don't recommend doing that. Let me see if I've got... Let's try it on something a little bit different. So this is actually from Pokemon the first movie. Well, let's see. First of all, let me bring up the actual image. So this is the base image. This is much higher resolution, obviously, because this came from the Blu-ray. So it's. I think this might actually only be 720 because of how I captured it. But if we put it through here, let's see what we get. I think this is actually one of the enhanced scenes from it, the rotation around Brock and Nurse Joy, when Nurse Joy's unbrainwashed or whatever. I think that's actually one of the. But you can definitely see here how it. We zoom in here to our original image.
Yeah.
We get in one or two more levels, and we should be pretty close here on the zoom factor. Yeah, you can see how it was able to do some kind of impressive stuff here with the things. Despite, like I said, this technology is borderline magic, and as you might expect, there is equivalent technology for audio out there. So don't be surprised in the near future if you start getting movies with enhanced, restored audio from like the 70s and earlier, because I think we're going to see some of that.
Well, I mean, I think they used some of that in Disney's Once Upon a Studio, too, like if you've seen that, because they've got clips and recordings of actors from, like, the 30s, and some of them you can tell a little bit that there was, it was recorded on different equipment and less fidelity, but, like, I'm sure they used a lot of this type of technology to enhance some of that, the old footage and old audio.
Yeah, like if we take a look at this upscale picture, you can see there's some kind of weird, if we go back to the high resolution, there's some kind of interesting, weird, like diagonal type patterns here, and maybe I think it overdid it, and that might just be because this model wasn't designed for this particular image type. But still pretty impressive, and if you've been seeing the generative AI stuff and think I'm not really interested in that or whatever, it's maybe something that you should take a look at. So I've also used like some of the there's also commercial software out there. This one maybe didn't clean up quite as nicely. I think this is a 16 millimeter shot. For those not aware, Pokemon the first movie, it was originally done in 16 millimeter for the 98 Japanese version, and then later releases had some enhanced footage done that was shot on 35 millimeter. So I think this is the 16 millimeter. And you could theoretically build a model based on that was specifically designed for taking 16 millimeter footage and making it look more like 35, or 35 more like 65, 70 millimeter or IMAX film, and do some interesting stuff there. But you can sort of see what you have with that. So, just to review, here's the original version of that image. Like, I think a lot of folks, I mean, you've probably seen stuff like this between the commercial products and some of the other stuff. You've seen stuff like this and not realize it, I'm sure.
Right.
Still seems like it might look a little bit better. With a little fine-tuning in the more direct model, I think you could probably get some really nice stuff out of this to make this movie look a little more even. So... But that is kind of the gist of it. Like I said, if you have any questions about this, there's a whole world of these types of things out there. And I just wanted to take a little time and do something a little bit different here. If there's some other things you want us to try, we can certainly try and work that out. And you can find us on well, it's X now, but we'll see if that name sticks. At PokePress is me on there, or pokepress@gmail.com. Or a comment on one of these videos. We always appreciate that. But I wanted to show some of the stuff that's out there and give people a real feel for what kind of possibilities there are. Right now, in my spare time, I'm working on some audio models that will allow upscaling FM radio to be closer, maybe to CD quality and stuff like that. But there's a lot of good stuff out here that isn't, to be honest, controversial enough to garner that much attention. But you can sort of see some of the stuff in that area. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for us. I appreciate everyone who tuned in to this, whether it was live or a little bit later. Let me go ahead and stop that share there. But
yes,
really do appreciate anyone who came in there for this.
So, world of AI.
Yeah. So I would, like I said, I think this will be great for the anime. What they can do with this, like they can take since they went through the first 50 episodes and did a full remake, they could build a model based on that. They could do something similar for seasons. You know, when they switched to computer design, they could do that for that, and then finally they switched in like 4th generation to HD, so they don't really need that anymore at that point. But they could make the first 9 or 10 or 11 seasons of the TV show look a lot better with stuff like this. So a lot of interesting technological possibilities. So, all right. Well, thank you very much, Anne.
Thank you. This was very educational.
Mm-hmm.